Continuing on with the program, and this gentleman, next gentleman, certainly does not need an introduction at all. He has continued to lead our Air Force to even greater heights than it's ever been before, particularly during the recent conflict over in the Middle East. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the stage our Chief of Staff, General John Jumper.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Very kind of you. Thanks very much. It is a distinct pleasure for me to be here tonight and to be able to address this group. And I must tell you that as festive as this audience is, I find myself in a bit of a nostalgic mood as I look across this audience with familiar faces over so many years. I grew up about the same time that the Air Force was formed, and I grew up over a number of years with the heroes of our Air Force, and I got to see some of them this weekend. We had the Air Force Association convention in Los Angeles, and we took a group. We had a little gathering called the Gathering of Eagles, and in that gathering we had about 25 of our Air Force heroes, 4 Medal of Honor winners, a few astronauts and some fighter aces, including guys like Bob Hoover and Chuck Yeager. These are guys that grew up hanging around my house. My dad was an Air Force fighter pilot, and many of these guys bounced me on their knee, and I got to introduce them in a very public way to an audience of people who really don't know much about the Air Force or heroes, and they stood up and clapped for 5 minutes as we described what each one of these legends of our Air Force did as part of the celebration of 100 years of powered flight. And I've been reflecting ever since that time on how much our Air Force over time has done to elevate the human spirit, to inspire the spirit of exploration and adventure, to make people feel good about themselves and proud of what they do, which is what, of course, this magnificent organization and the people sitting before me here tonight have done for years, and in many cases dedicated their lifetime to support. I'm also a bit nostalgic because this year saw the passing of General Bill Creech, who more than anything loved the United States Air Force Thunderbirds and what they stood for. And he took that spirit of excellence and he brought it to the rest of the United States Air Force in a way that nobody has been able to do before him, and I'm sure nobody will be able to replicate. And of course, I can't help but feel that with his passing, the world is a lesser place. But he leaves behind the spirit that's in this room, and a spirit that will continue to propel our Air Force to greater things in the future. A lot of these people I've been hanging around with over the weekend, and many in this room tonight, are of course veterans of what we call the greatest generation, those that served in World War II. And I hang around in Washington, D.C. a lot, and I'm working a lot with the President and the Secretary of Defense every day, and I see the challenges they go through as they watch our troops on the ground in Iraq challenged day in and day out. And it reminds me of the price we all must pay for the freedoms and the liberties that we enjoy. And just the other day, I picked up a book I started to read called An Army at Dawn by Rick Atkinson. And in the prologue to that book, as he tries to put World War II in context, he reminds us that From the 1st of September 1939 until the end of the World War II in 1945, there were 2,174 days of war. And on each and every day of that war, listen to this carefully, 26,400 people died. And it reminds us of the price we pay when the liberties and the freedoms and the precious things of this world become unraveled. A crisis we face as a nation today. And I look out on the people here and I am thankful for what this group has done to bring into our Air Force the people with that right spirit, that right stuff, who have helped us over the years sustain that force. And let me close with just an assurance to all of you. Today's generation of youngsters, a lot of people are worried about. Youngsters brought up in the Beavis and Butthead generation and on The Simpsons and sort of taught that there's nothing that we should respect that's of real institutional value. And you wonder if there's any hope for this nation. And I want to tell you, whenever I get depressed hanging around Washington, D.C., all the politics and the infighting that goes on, one of the favorite things I do is go down to Lackland Air Force Base on a Friday morning. Every Friday morning we bring 1,000 new airmen into our Air Force. A lot of them come in because of you. And they put on this fantastic parade. And after the parade they come back and they get together with their parents whom they haven't seen for at least several weeks. And I sort of hide off in the shadows under the bleachers and I watch the same thing happen every time. Some newly minted airman standing in front of his or her mother or father saying, "Mom, it is me." The dad standing back saying, "Ain't the kid I brought here." The kid I brought here looked like he fell down the steps with his tackle box in his hand with a pierced lip and a pierced ear and a pierced eye. This kid's standing up straight saying, "Ma'am and sir." And that's about the time I stroll out in the sunlight and I'm acting all important and stuff. And it's always the mothers who come over and say, "How did you do that?" "I've been trying to do that for 17 years. But the point is, it is that same kid. It's that same kid exposed to a little bit of leadership, a little bit of pride, a little bit of sense of accomplishment. You go down and you shake hands with these kids and you say, "Are you proud of yourself?" And you're surprised at the answer you get. "Sir, this is the first time anybody's told me that they've really been proud of me. This is the first time I feel like I've really accomplished something." And what you learn is that when you're exposed to a little bit of pride of an accomplishment, when you've got the right leadership, you feel that pride. You feel it once, you want to feel it again, you can never turn back. And what I want you all to know in this room is, as a measure of what you do, this generation of youngsters is no less dedicated, patriotic, committed, willing to give their lives than any generation that ever served. And we all ought to be very, very proud of that. Now, I'm going to tell you one more story before I get off the stage. It's the story of Senior Airman Jason Cunningham. It's one of these kids. Senior Airman Jason Cunningham was a pararescueman stationed at Moody Air Force Base in Georgia. In Afghanistan, you'll remember early in the conflict, a helicopter that went in and a Navy seaman, a Navy SEAL, fell out of the helicopter, and nobody really knew what happened to him. And they went back and gathered up, and a group of Army Rangers and 3 airmen decided they volunteered to get on this helicopter and go try and find Seaman Roberts at a place called Roberts Ridge. And as the CH-47 approached the landing zone, it was shot down, and they were surrounded by 360 degrees. Senior Airman Cunningham was the pararescueman, and he pulled the wounded off of that helicopter as best he could, and the other airmen, combat controllers, began to try and get some help in there to get them out of that situation. And during the course of that, Senior Airman Cunningham was mortally wounded. Secretary Roach and I went to Kirtland Air Force Base several weeks after that, and we presented Senior Airman Cunningham's widow the Air Force Cross. And while we were there, all those Army Rangers that were on that helicopter were there. And these big strapping Army Rangers with big tears rolling down their cheeks told us of how Cunningham knew he wasn't going to make it, and he told the Army Rangers what to do to save the other wounded. And I told that audience that day that in my 37 years, I have more than 1,000 combat sorties. But on Jason Cunningham's very first, he showed more honor and courage and valor than I ever showed in all 1,000 of mine. And Teresa Cunningham, when she received his Air Force Cross, she had been enrolled in Valdosta State College right outside of Moody Air Force Base there in ROTC. And I went last June and 10 lieutenant bars on her, and she's serving in our Air Force today. She's got 2 daughters, 2 and 4. Now, when we go to Corona, and that's the meeting where all the 4 stars get together, and we all get together and act real important, I tell all those 4 stars that we better look ourselves in the face every day, look in that mirror, and make sure that we are damn worthy of leading those youngsters like Jason Cunningham. Because that's what the nation is giving us. And we ought to be very proud of that. And you ought to be very proud of yourselves. So I'm honored to be here tonight for many, many reasons. I'm proud to be among you. I'm proud to know so many of you over so many years. Let me just say, God bless the United States Air Force Thunderbirds. God bless our United States Air Force. And God bless this United States of America. Thank you all very much.